I will never forget the gut-wrenching moment I realized that the two people I trusted the most, my wife and my best friend, had betrayed me. It was the day my marriage began to crumble. I'm not a religious man, and I would never compare myself to Jesus. But the irony of the timing wasn't lost on me. It was Good Friday, the day associated with mourning, loss, and despair. According to the Bible, Good Friday was the day Jesus was crucified, leaving his followers grieving, believing all hope was lost. Little did they know that resurrection and redemption were just around the corner. And just like them, I had no idea that my darkest days would eventually lead to a life more fulfilling than I could have imagined. It was also the eve of our youngest son's first birthday celebration. Exactly 1 year earlier, I had sat beside my wife in a hospital room, holding her hand as she endured a grueling and terrifying labor. I watched her face, pale with fear, her body trembling. And yet, in that chaotic moment, all I saw was the woman I loved, the person I wanted by my side forever. As we shed tears together, whispering reassurances of love, I truly believed we were an unbreakable team. Fast forward a year, and I had the day off work. She had been struggling with stress, feeling overwhelmed after returning to a demanding job post-maternity leave. Wanting to give her a well-deserved break, I decided to take the kids to my parents' house, where we were hosting the birthday party. She could finally enjoy an uninterrupted night's sleep, her first in over 2 years, considering we also had a 20-month-old. That afternoon, she went out for lunch with her coworkers, as she usually did on Fridays. She sent me a few pictures. From the outing, smiling, carefree. She looked like she was having the time of her life. Meanwhile, my day was unfolding very differently. While feeding my youngest son, disaster struck. His diaper had somehow shifted, leading to an explosive mess that covered him, his high chair, and the floor. It was a scene straight out of a crime drama, except the victim was my dining room, and the weapon was, well, you get the picture. I had to wrangle our overly curious dog and toddler away from what must have looked like the most exciting finger-painting project of their lives. As I cleaned up, overwhelmed but laughing at the absurdity, I snapped a picture and sent it to my wife. It was my way of saying, "Look how crazy my day is," and, let's be honest, to earn some brownie points for taking one for the team. Later that evening, I made a quick Costco run to pick up supplies for the party. While there, I called my wife to see if she needed anything. She casually told me she was heading home from work but had stopped by Old Navy to return some clothes. Something about her voice felt off. There was a certain tone, one I recognized but couldn't immediately place. I wasn't the jealous type. I'd never questioned her friendships, whether they involved drinks with coworkers or trips to Vegas. But something about this conversation didn't sit right. So I asked, "Who are you with?" "Nobody," she replied. I knew she was lying. That's when I checked our shared Find My iPhone location. Instead of Old Navy, she was at a bar we'd visited many times before. My mind raced. Was she planning a surprise for me? Was I overreacting? Technically, I wasn't wrong. Throughout the evening, I kept an eye on her location. She eventually made her way to Old Navy, but something still felt off. Later that night, while making instant Kraft mac and cheese, I called her again. There was something weird about the texture, and instead of Googling it, I figured I'd ask her. Maybe, deep down, I just wanted an excuse to hear her voice again, to figure out if I was imagining things. She sounded annoyed, slightly distant. I found out later that she wasn't alone in the car. He was with her, listening in on speakerphone. For anonymity's sake, let's call him Donald. Not because he resembles a certain former president, but because, like that Donald, he's incredibly political and sees anyone who disagrees with him as an idiot. He thrives on self-righteousness, envies the success of others, and has an ego too big for his own good. Oh, and one more thing. He had an affair. The irony, He had the audacity to criticize real Donald on social media for his moral failings, while secretly betraying his own wife with mine. But back to the mac and cheese. As we spoke, her frustration was evident. Later, I would learn why. She told Donald I was ruining her night off. Her words cut deep. I wasn't just a husband cleaning up a mess that day. I was the mess she wanted to escape from. She was out on a date with another man, yet she had the audacity to be upset with me for calling her twice that evening. The clues clicked together like pieces of a tragic puzzle. What if she had met someone on that trip? What if this was the night he finally came down to see her, while I stayed home with the kids, giving her the perfect excuse? Tucking the boys into bed that night was excruciating. I was almost certain that the love of my life, my best friend, was with another man. Using my kindness as a cover, it felt like taking repeated blows to the stomach. I tried to convince myself otherwise. Maybe she's with a friend. But she always told me when she was meeting friends. Maybe she's planning something for me. But there was nothing to plan, and the fact that I was obsessively tracking her location didn't exactly align with the trust I was trying to force myself to feel. Then she called. She said she was at the mall. But as we spoke, I watched her phone's location move. Not from the mall, but from a different train station. One that happened to be on the same block as her office, miles away from where she claimed to be. Slowly, her location inched up the freeway, heading toward home. Had she gone back to her office for some secret rendezvous? Had she met him at the station? Both? After we hung up, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. Desperately, I combed through our banking app, searching for a charge at Taco Bell, the place she said she'd grabbed dinner. Nothing. I scrolled through social media, looking for photos at the bar her location had pinged earlier, scanning the backgrounds for a familiar face. I checked both train stations, hoping to spot her in some random stranger's post. Nothing. I was spiraling. I didn't dare tell my parents. Not yet. I had no solid proof, and I didn't want them to act differently around her and tip her off. Was married. Yet, for the first time in my life, I had never felt so completely alone.